We are in the Garden of Gethsemane. I'll kind of make just a few brief comments to get us all on track from Sunday's class. It was asked in class, hey, are we going to pass over, I didn't mean to do that. Are we going to pass over the prayers that Jesus has? No, that was my fault. That wasn't Tyler's fault. I requested that he just focus on Peter as kind of a case study so that we could dive in deeper to everything that's happening in the Garden of Gethsemane and Jesus' prayers and look at all of that together. So what was already covered, we went into Matthew chapter 26, verse 30. After singing a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. I would encourage, if you want to, Psalm 118, I should say. Psalm 118 is one that would have mostly been used at that time. The reason it's very interesting, if you want to take a look at that in your own time, is that is a song of praise that very much connects to the coming Messiah. So it's just very interesting that would have been used at that time, and then Jesus singing, hopefully with his apostles, about that very thing, the fulfillment of the Messiah. So after that, they come, and y'all already had the discussion. Jesus said to them, you will all fall away because of me this night, for it is written, I will strike down the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be scattered. But after I have been raised, I will go ahead of you to Galilee. But Peter said to him, even though all may fall away because of you, I will never fall away. And Jesus said to him, truly I say to you that this very night, before a rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter said, even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you. And all the disciples said the same thing. I reiterate what was brought up and what you've already read for this purpose. As we come into the garden scene and we talk about the interaction that Jesus is going to have with his apostles, but also the inner circle that he asked to go with him as he's praying. The reason that I believe that Matthew gives us Peter and all the things that he did well and he did not do well is so that, not that we should beat up on Peter, but as Tyler was rightly saying, that Peter didn't do all the things in the right way, but that doesn't mean that he's like this man who's not to be looked at or not to be appreciated. Instead, as I've always said in these classes, the real points for us to focus on aren't the men or the women, it's Jesus. We're looking at what Jesus' example is, and then we look at all the ancillary people around him, whoever it is, and we say, okay, how did they respond? And that's what we're going to be able to do tonight. We're going to see, how does Jesus respond in this event that I don't think any of us could possibly fully understand, of knowing what's to come and trying to process that. And then we're going to look at him and all the pressure he's under, and then we're also going to look at how Peter and all the rest of them. And yes, absolutely, you look in Scripture and we see that Jesus is talking about this scattering, and it's a fulfillment of prophecy. But as any prophecy or anything that's foretold, that doesn't mean that it's the right or the good thing to scatter, or that it was without free will, and he couldn't have done that, or they couldn't have done that. Even if his inner circle doesn't scatter, other people are going to scatter. If Peter doesn't do what he's going to do, another person's going to do it. If Judas isn't the one that betrays him, somebody's going to betray him. It's all set up for that to work. And even if it wasn't these people, prophecies are still going to be true, and Jesus is going to fulfill everything that's been said throughout all of this time. Just as an example, so that kind of clicks a little bit more, we had prophets coming and telling the children of Israel, you're going to be kicked out of your city, right? You're not going to get to live here. You're going to be taken into exile. But that didn't mean it had to be a certain generation. It could have been any generation. Actually, we see time and time again in the Old Testament of something being said and God giving them a reprieve and not doing whatever it is, but it is going to come, because eventually there's going to be people that are not going to completely follow God, not going to put their faith in Him, and they're going to see and take, which is essentially what Peter does I'll say a little bit more on that in just a moment. I want to begin tonight by sharing a video. I believe Tyler may have already said some things on this. I do have 2 videos tonight if we have time. But don't worry, it's not just a video night. We're getting into the Word. I just think these are hopefully helpful to convey not only the truth that's happening, but also the emotion that's happening in this. The first one is just a short little 3-minute video in which 2 gentlemen are sitting in the Garden of Gethsemane, and they're going to relate something to you about why there's 3 prayers, and I'll say a little bit more after that. But so you know what you're looking for, listen to what they're saying about how many times, back in the ancient days and now, how many times you press an olive to get the oil, and then we'll make a further distinction about that regarding Jesus.
In what could be or is nearby or could actually be the spot of the Garden of Gethsemane, one of the most intense passages of Scripture in the entire Bible. Does this ever get old for you?
It's breathtaking.
It's my first time. It's overwhelming.
So spiritually powerful.
Right, because again, it's not about the actions that took place here. It's about the heart of what took place here. Jesus was experiencing heartbreak. This is where the most emotional moment that we've ever seen captured in the Bible took place. And one thing that I didn't really make sense of until I was here in Israel this week was the importance and the relevance and the metaphor of the fact that this is the Mount of Olives. The Garden of Gethsemane was in a grove of olive trees.
I mean, first of all, think about it for a moment. He is called the Messiah. Messiah means the anointed one. Anointed with what? Anointed with olive oils. To be set apart as the king of Israel, you had to be anointed with the holy olive oil, as well as to be a priest. The priests were anointed with oil before they stepped into their service in the temple. The Garden of Gethsemane actually means the place of the olive press. This is the place where they would press and crush the olives, and the oil here would be used in the temple. So here he is as the Messiah, the priest, in the place where the oil is being produced, and he's about to be crushed for the weight of sin.
Right, so that's the thing is we actually were yesterday, and we saw an olive press, and how it was done. It was a multi-step process, but it was all about crushing. And so Jesus is surrounded by olives and is being crushed.
To get the full oil out of the olive, you had to crush it not once, not twice, but 3 times. And this correlates to the 3 times Jesus asked his disciples to tarry with him in prayer. It's each time more is being squeezed out of him. Each time he's feeling more of the weight of the burden of sin that he is going to bear, until the 3rd crushing, the final crushing, where actually blood begins to come out from within him.
So it's not an accident that they wrote in this gospel account that he was sweating and bleeding, because that is a picture of what it looks like essentially when olives are turned into oil. And the disciples weren't willing to go through that. And we are oftentimes unwilling to go through that. So the Garden of Gethsemane, for me, it's a reminder not only of this amazing story and not only what Jesus went through, but what we actually should go through, because when you're pressing on those olives, more than anything else, it brings light. That's what they used olive oil for as well, for olive lamps, bringing light to the world. And that's what Jesus was willing to go through to become.
The olive is valuable, but the oil is only produced through the crushing.
So there was a quote there at the end, if you could hear that. The gentleman said, "The oil is valuable, but the oil is only produced in the crushing." Seems pretty profound to me, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's just telling a fact. How do you get, juice that we drink? Well, you have to crush it to do that. But as with anything we read in our scriptures, it's not just by accident. It's not just trying to dive deep and get something that sounds cool to talk about in a Bible class. It's something that we're supposed to look at and think through what it means. Not to just say, well, okay, Jesus had to do a thing, and this was the plan, this is how it goes. I think we're supposed to stop and think on it and meditate for a moment when you're thinking about, by this way, this is just an image from the Garden of Gethsemane. And by the way, some of the trees, not all of them, but a few of them are still 2,000 years old from that area. So, as a tourist, they might tell you this place or that place. I wouldn't go that far, but you can know this area, as the gentleman said, is where this would have taken place. So that's the image that you're looking at. But within all that, he was talking about what is just an everyday part of life for getting the oil out. And there's 3 different pressings that you do, right? The first time you press it is the most pure, and what we use in our cooking and everything, virgin olive oil. What that would have been used for, and specifically in the Garden of Gethsemane, is to be taken across that valley and be taken to the temple. The first pressing was only used as the most pure to put in the menorah in the temple for the lampstand. The second time that they press it, it's obviously not as pure, a little bit more impurities going on there. So it's used for food, medicine, perfume, cosmetics. The third pressing used for more everyday things such as oil lamps, soaps, things of that nature. So what does this all do, and how does this all connect? Well, let's hop into our Bibles and let's just give this some thought and work it out together if we can. In chapter 26 and verse 36, then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane. So now you know that's the place of the olive press. And he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee and began to be grieved and distressed. Then he said to them, "My soul is deeply grieved to the point of death. Remain here and keep watch with me." Let's just pause there after those 3 verses. In mine, I'm reading in this class from the New American Standard 95 edition. I would love to hear from different translations that we have here tonight. Mine says in verse 38, "My soul is deeply grieved." Are there any other translations that yours might say? Very sorrowful. There we go. Sorrow, grieved, anguish, troubled. So this is something I thought on, for a time a while back, and I was thinking, I honestly feel like I've read this scripture so many times that I just watered it down as if, well, obviously he knows what's coming, but it just hit me, like, just think for a second, if we were describing, ourselves or a friend or a family member, and you said, "Hey, how's John doing?" And you said, "Well, it's tough right now for Brother John. He's very sorrowful. He's very grieved. He's anguished as if he feels like he's going to die." What are some ways that you would describe that type of mindset for your friend? What would you say is going on within his head, within his life? How would we just describe that in everyday terms? Okay, hurting. So that's not just physical. That's things internal. There's hurt. What else we might say about our friend that's going through something like that? Sadness. And there's sadness for so many things, right? There's sadness for the world, sadness for those that haven't followed him, sadness in a physical form because he's God and man, the things he's going to have to go through. Say again? There we go. I think there's more than, it's not just one. That's why I asked. There's not one right answer here, but I would say, yeah, my friend is feeling depressed. Maybe to the point where if you're really stressed about somebody, you might be like, I'm just afraid so much is going on in their life that I'm afraid they're going to have some type of a breakdown, and we need to be with them. We need to do whatever we can to encourage, just be there, just sit, just listen. I just want us to kind of sit in that to understand. It says, began to be grieved and distressed. My soul is deeply grieved, or my soul is in anguish. My soul is sad, whatever it is. It says to the point of death. It's not, I'm having a bad day. It's, That's why Luke records his sweat is as what? Drops of blood, which is a medical condition, and I'm sure we've heard that in the Lord's Supper talk or something, and so we know these things. It's a point at which we can't imagine, and here's why I don't think we can ever imagine it. Now, I'm always interested when I ask these types of questions because, I think I might know the answer, but there's always going to be somebody in the crowd, right? So that's okay. You can be that person in the crowd. Is there anybody in here, raise your hand, if you would prefer to go ahead and know the day of your death? There's always, right? That's just, we all process things differently. And I think some people would. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Maybe, if we're not even talking spiritual, physical, live life, things like that. Do things maybe you hadn't done and you want to make sure to do them for friends and family. So while there's always going to be some of us that would prefer to know, a lot of us would not, and we know those reasons too. I don't have to speak too profoundly to know why. Because of what would you do to you? You'd be fine, years out or a year out, but it's from this point forward, you're thinking, it's another day closer. It's another day closer. Jesus is now, he's done the thing. He's come in, he's done the triumphal entry, he's gone to the temple, he's had debates, he's had, arguments, he's called out religious leaders, and now he's had the Passover, and so that's like the last thing, and now he knows he has to become the Passover lamb. I just think that is something that convicts me, and I don't know how it moves in all of us, and I don't want to get overly emotional as if this is not about fact and emotion, but we should have emotion to appreciate what has been done on our behalf, that it's not just a story, it's not just something that happened, it's not, well, yeah, but he's the Son of God. Yeah, but he also, what's his favorite name? He calls himself the Son of Man. So that we can understand that he is fully from the Father, but fully in the flesh. Yes, ma'am? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He kind of had to be who he needed to be. But at this point, remember he says in another gospel, I've greatly desired to eat the Passover. And I think that's why, because this is going to be his last kind of time for this fellowship. Because after the Passover, what's he say? You're all going to scatter. You're my best friends in the flesh, and you're not going to keep the faith. I know you're not, And there's good reasons for that, but he would wish that they would have faith in the many times he's said it has to happen. But even though they've heard it has to happen, they're still going to lose faith, and they're still going to do Peter things. And that's not in there to beat upon Peter. It's there for you and me to say, we are Peter as well. And yeah, he had good intentions, but he did things that were not good. We have good intentions. We don't always make the wisest decisions. Because we're in the flesh, we're stressed, we're worried, all of the things. Yes, sir.
I think of the mental state he may have been in. I think most recently the Israeli captives were taken by Hamas.
Yeah.
And were ultimately killed.
Yeah.
Imagine what they were going through. And then I think of Jesus.
Amen.
Knowing he's going to die.
That would just, as a captive, you pretty much know that you're probably not going to get out alive. And there could be some torture involved. And it's, yeah. That's a great word for it, and that's why I believe he's at where he's at. And so this kind of jumps off of from I wanted to put it on our hearts to now, here's why I wanted Peter covered in and of himself in a character study Sunday, so that now we can go, okay, I get it. Good intentions, wrong behavior, disobedience. But we can identify that because we do that too. So, but what can we do to move forward? I mean, all of us are still going to have our Peter moments. It's going to happen. But we shouldn't justify our Peter moments. We should at least say, well, what can I do to be more like the Messiah? And so we jump into the prayers, but it's not just about prayers. It's about looking at the example of Jesus versus those of us in the flesh and what we can learn. So let's jump in and see what's going on here. Verse 39. He went a little beyond them, and he fell on his face and prayed, saying, My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. He came to his disciples, and he found them sleeping, and he said to Peter, So you men could not keep watch with me for 1 hour? Keep watching and praying, that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Let's pause and break it down per the 3 prayers. You have the first crushing. You have Jesus coming to the Father, and I want us to be very specific about his language because it changes, and I think there's something to take from that. In the first prayer that Jesus gives, he's our example, specifically what is his request of the Father. Okay, there's a word. Let's get the whole phrase there. Okay, right before. There's still one more word. If possible. So, at this point in the flesh, Jesus knows what has to be done. It's not as if we're questioning Jesus or God here. But since it is God, could God do this another way? Well, yeah, he's God. As long as he's keeping his promises that he's made all the way from Genesis chapter 12, all throughout the prophets, yes. This certain way that it's done is decided by God, not by man. That's what I've been doing through all these classes to reiterate. This is not an accident. This is not an accident. This is God ordained. Evil isn't overcoming good. And so Jesus says, I know we have to do this, and I'm ready to do this. I'm here for it. But Father, and whatever that meant, I don't know exactly what it means. Does it mean maybe without the beatings? Maybe without, I don't know. It's not for our heads to decipher that, but obviously, as Doug said, you know what's coming. There's anguish. Can we do this a way that just is slightly different, Father? So let's just identify that. Secondly, here's where we get into the answering the question from Sunday's character study. Peter is a good man with good intentions. All of us are good people with good intentions. But what are some of the reasons that Peter and us fail at times to walk in faith? Well, fear. We just don't understand the moment, you know. And then a third one. I want to call it pride, although I think there's probably some caveats to that, but work with me here. I'm just going to repeat what we've read. Peter said to him, even though all may fall away because of you, I will never fall away. Okay? Listen, I love the heart. I want that type of heart. I know you do too. And then later, even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you. All the disciples said the same thing too. Let's put this in the context of everything we've been studying in Matthew. Do you remember back earlier in Matthew where Jesus talks about not swearing on things on this earth or on yourself or on your family or on the temple? The reason for that I explained in that class was because we're human and it's useless. We can make promises, we can swear on something, but at the end of the day, until we get in a moment, that's when we find out who we are, right? We're refined by the fire, when we're crushed in the moment. That's how we find out, and that's what James talks about later, that you need to keep going through trials to learn more about yourself and to grow. And so within all of this, Peter is doing something that's as old as the Garden of Eden, and it's trusting in himself. So pride, or whatever way you might see that, it is. It's saying, seeing and taking. It's saying, I know that you said these things are going to happen, and I know that you said we're going to scatter, but not me. So kind of, it's not kind of, it is what Tyler was saying Sunday morning. He's saying, listen, yeah, those 11 might do it, but I would not do that. And that's the same as any of us walking through daily life and saying to ourselves, I would never do that sin. I would never fall into that trap. I would say, let's not even put ourselves inside anywhere close to that trap, because we might say no, but if we haven't been there before and we haven't been crushed in that experience, we might not know how we're going to react. The point is to look at what Peter did versus what Jesus did. Here's what Jesus did, and then we're going to follow up to what he told Peter and the other two to do. First, when Jesus is going through crushing in his life, what's his first step? Right here. What's he doing? He's praying. So essentially he's saying, I know who I am, I know who my Father is, I know my connection, but in the flesh, the thing that I need is not myself. It is to fall on my face and ask the Father for His direction, and then notice what He says. We always look at the parts about them falling asleep and all of that, but that's kind of to be understood. We are talking about late at night, they've done the Passover, they're tired, like, we're human, we're going to fall asleep if we're just sitting out in a dark night in a dark olive grove, right? That's very possible. So what is it that Peter and the two brothers could have done to help them to not actually do the things that Jesus said you're probably going to do, right? Well, what does he say to them? Keep watch and pray. Pray. Peter says, I've got this, Lord. I've got this, Messiah. Jesus just lets it go. It's fine. Have that opinion. He doesn't scold him. He just says this is going to happen. Because he needs us to fail at times, right? He doesn't want us to fail, but we need it, right? We need to figure that out. And he says, so this is going to happen, but you know how you could keep from doing it? Pray. Don't look at yourself and look at your faith. Don't look at how great you've been in the past at following, believing, having faith. As soon as there's a crushing coming in your life, stop. Pray. Second prayer begins in 42. He went away again a second time and prayed, saying, My Father, if this cannot pass away unless I drink it, your will be done. Again he came to them, found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. Is there anything different about Jesus' prayer in verse 39 and verse 42? Same verbiage, but do you think there's anything? If it's possible. It is. It's almost like give me strength, but this is how it has to happen. Okay, so if it's very similar, but if there is a tweak, then we can make a clear biblical assumption. If the first time he says remove it, and this time he just says be with me, then did he get an answer? Yeah, I think that was I hear you, son. It has to be. So a lot of times we will want to pray to God, hoping to change His mind. And we can change His mind. It's a biblical principle. We see that. God can, but it doesn't mean He's going to. But a lot of times when we pray, well, if it's not going to go the way I want it to, well, then never mind. And we may not say the word never mind, but we kind of do with how we take our next steps. Because, well, I've already prayed, so now I've got to do. Jesus didn't say, well, that's not the answer I want. We're done here. It was, well, if that's your will, then I accept it, but I still need you. I need you. I need your guidance. I need your comfort even throughout this. Yes, ma'am.
I wonder, too, how miserable it was for God to hear if it's possible. Of course it's possible, but how can
Yeah.
God? The answer is no.
Yeah.
And how miserable that would be for him. I also think about in Matthew 6, verses 10, your kingdom come, your will be done. No one ever had to put that statement into action to
Yeah.
that degree as Jesus did. It comes down to submission.
Be careful what you pray for, right? Because your kingdom come is going to need this to happen. It's so true, and it's so hard for us to do that because we want what we want and we're in the flesh and we don't know all the things. So please don't take that I'm just like looking at you as if this isn't a problem for me and saying, well, if you just pray about it more, you could get through it. But I would tell all of us as family, I know that's not always my first step, and that makes me a Peter. And I'm sure you can relate. So what the first step should be is prayer, and maybe multiple prayers. This is an outside principle I just want to stick in. I can't go down the path too far, but just something to put in your mind and think on as you go home. How many times does Jesus pray? Anybody remember how many times Paul prays about his thorn in the flesh? I'm not saying that's the magical number and don't pray more than 3 times, because we also have pray without ceasing, even though I think that's a slightly different context. But I think there is something, as Julie said, about praying to still be with me, praying again. And it takes a lot of faith to just walk away from a third prayer and just live in the footsteps of Jesus. I think it takes less faith, and I know this sounds hard, but I believe it. I think it takes less faith in God to hit him up a 4th, 5th, 6th, 20th time. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. I'm just identifying something that I see here is that Jesus asked. I think he gets his answer. He asks to still be with me, get me through this, and then one more time, and then okay. Even if it's an answer we don't want, but I know you're with me. I know you're not going to leave me. Now it's time to go do hard things. Verse 44. He left them again, and he went away, and he prayed a 3rd time, saying the same thing once more. He came to the disciples, and he said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. Behold, the one who betrays me is at hand." I want to make a statement on this, maybe. I don't know why it won't. Can you just advance it one, please, sir? If it doesn't, it's no big deal. It's just an image for our visualization. Tyler made a point. I want to bring it up one more time. Yeah, sure. Let me see. It's just an image. Anyway, we'll move on. If you might have seen it, you might not. It was just for a split second. But something I didn't know until years ago is the proximity to the Garden of Gethsemane and the land and all of that. But if you caught it just for a second, you could see the Dome of the Rock out in the distance. There you go. Nice. Thank you, brother. This is just a painting, obviously, but this is a factual painting of the distance from where Jesus would have been to the temple. What I didn't know when I was younger is that all you have to do to get away from people and escape is use the same road that Jesus came in, the same road that the Good Samaritan is on. In that road, all you have to do is turn around from this picture. So if I'm looking at it and I'm looking with you guys, I would just have to turn around, go up that road that he used for the Palm Sunday, and head over Bethany where he raised Lazarus, and the rest of the way is into the wilderness. And you could go any cave, any nook and cranny, it's wilderness. And to think about Jesus saying these prayers and then saying the hour is here. In other Gospels, it even says he can see the lanterns coming towards him. So he sees it. What would we do if we thought we could die and we saw people coming? Most likely get up and run. Could he have in the flesh chosen, this is too much, I'm running for the hills? Could he have done that in the flesh? Yeah, he's human. He could have done that. But he chose to know they're coming, see it coming, and just say, get up. Verse 47, while he was, behold, Judas, one of the 12, came up, accompanied by a large crowd with swords and clubs, who came from the chief priests and elders of the people. Now he who was betraying him gave them a sign, saying, "Whomever I kiss, he is the one, seize him." Immediately Judas went to Jesus and said, "Hail, Rabbi," and he kissed him. Jesus said to him, Very same language as the Passover. Do what you have come for. And he came, laid hands on Jesus, and he seized him. He already covered what Peter did. What Peter did is what any of us with good intentions would have done, but it's not what should have been done. What should have been done is submitting, prayer, submitting. Jesus has already told you multiple times and even explained himself what has to happen. So the good heart doesn't mean faithful obedience. We all know that. That's in sermons all the time, right? What is desperately sick? Our hearts, Jeremiah says. Good intentions, but he didn't pray about it, doesn't seem. And if he did, he didn't fully take it in. And again, can we understand that? Yes, we can understand it. But just look at the two differences. You have the Son of Man whose whole life's job is to fulfill what a man should have been in the garden, and we never were. So even when he's being crushed a first, second, third time, this is how he responds. Still with anguish, still with all the human emotions, but he says, God, I submit. It's one of the hardest things in the world for all of us to do, because in a crushing, that's not what we want to do. But we need to pray and ask God to guide us through this. The rest of... Yes, sir, go ahead. Yes, sir, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's right. For this purpose. And then, what are we saved for? For this purpose, to glorify God, just like you just said. That's right. That's right. But the ability to do that. Thank you for saying that. Yes, sir. Do you have something?
To your point about he could have run.
Sure.
One of the other Gospels mentions the fact that when they came, they were asking for him. He said, "Here I am."
Here I am.
The soldiers fell back.
Oh.
And he had to say, "Come and do what you've come to do."
That's right.
He had to help them do what was going to have to be done. And I can't even imagine.
The only thing I can...
Internal strength is to know what they're getting ready to do to him, and yet he's having to encourage them. You have to do this. Come on and do it.
I don't know that we can ever have that strength, not within ourselves, right? So I want to close class in something that Steve just said, talking about when Jesus says, essentially, I'm giving myself up, which would be hard in and of itself. I'm going to close with about a 6-minute video that's just kind of a reenactment of this. I wanted us to end on seeing it and putting it in our heart. The bell, I'm sure, is going to ring in about 3 or 4 minutes. If you need to get up to get children and everything, no offense, go ahead. If you need to leave, understand, no offense. But I just really wanted to show this. It was something impactful for me, and I'd like to share. It's about 6 minutes, 30 seconds until we pause it. So we'll end class with this. Yes, sir? Yeah, please do.
Verse 39 there where you read.
Yes, sir.
Prayer, he said, "Not as I will, but
You.
as God's will."
Mm-hmm.
Again, he repeated in verse 42. It said, "I drink it." Unless I drink it, you will be done.
Yeah, your will be done. If this cannot pass, that's right. It shouldn't be ours. When we were saved by the blood of Jesus, our focus is to glorify Him. Great point. Thank you. Go ahead, brother.
En mi efshausha Gustavo me blishe stelta. Yehina kilt socha.
I Who do you seek?
I seek Jesus of Nazareth.
I am. Peter, put away the weapon. Those who live by the sword will die by the sword.
Walk with us in deception!
He does not keep the Sabbath. He eats with tax collectors and prostitutes. You claim to be the Messiah. He claims to be the King of the Jews. Not
You were with Jesus of Galilee, were you not?
Woman, I do not know what you're talking about. Hey.
Are you the Christ, the Son of God?
I am. And you will see the Son of Man on the right hand of power, and coming on the clouds of heaven.
You have all heard these blasphemy!
This man is one of them. He walks with Jesus of Galilee. It was this man.
No, I'm not. Do not know him.
Surely, you were with him. You speak as a Galilean speaks.
I do not know this man you speak of.
Hey, do that! Come with me!